Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
In the darkest corners of the internet, a nameless, formless entity has been growing. No one dares question where it was created or what it wants, but those who have been entranced by its musings chant its blood-curdling name in unison. Horror Movie Night!
Find Horror Movie Night on your favorite podcasting app or at hmnpodcast.com.
Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
Let's talk about, hey guys, it's the end of the year. It's the end of the year, a very exciting time, a very busy time. So instead of a guest, I thought we would sit here and we would discuss what our 5 favorite books that we read were. And I know personally that I don't think I read that many books that came out in 2024. So we're just going to say blanket statement of the books that you read this year, regardless how old. What were the 5 standout ones? I want to ask you, though, Eric. Only Light Left Burning. Do you want to keep on the list or remove from the list?
How about that could be your bonus? I mean,
Okay.
we both know
then,
that you both chose
well, because
the Only Light Left Burning, right?
I will say this with my listing then, because I always, throughout from Christmas to New Year's Eve, every day on my Instagram, I will post a story of what my top 10 of different pop culture things were. And your book will be my number 3 book that I've read this year. So it's for people listening.
Why not number 1?
It's
bitch?
listen, when you hear what beat you, you'll go, okay.
Who's 2 and 1?
We'll get there.
Tell me
We'll
now.
get there. One of them is an autobiography.
Okay.
But
I should be above that.
I don't know. It's a good
My
autobiography.
fiction is more important than a lived experience.
And I've always said that.
All right. Well, I mean, listen, if I'm going to be grilled, I guess I'll go first.
And yeah, don't include mine. Do a list of 5 that is not mine.
Okay, well then as I shift a few things here, then at number 5, this is going to be the only appearance of a book from an author that we had on the show this year.
I only have 1 too.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
go.
putting Skater Boy by Anthony Narada. I had so much fun with this book. I remember I was reading this book while dog sitting, and I think I got the whole book read in a single sitting. I just was ripping through, because the chapters are also digestible enough where it's you finish one chapter and you're like, all right, well, how many pages is the next one? And you're like, 6, I can handle 6 more pages.
Right.
And next thing you know, you've read 200 pages.
That's how they
You're
get
just,
ya.
so I had so much fun with it. I loved all of the characters. I think that that's the big thing is, as I've been reading more and more YA, and as we've been doing this podcast, if I ever had a negative thing to say about YA books is for your character to learn a lesson and grow throughout the books, sometimes you have to have a main character that can be a little grating for the first half of the book. And I think Anthony did a really great job of creating a character where you're so inside of his inner turmoil throughout the book that the main character in Skater Boy never hits that level of grating that some YA main characters can kind of hit in those first few pages. which just made it such like an easy breezy read for me. So I loved it so much.
That's a great first pick.
All right. And
so I didn't know we were ranking these. Now I'm like,
me neither. Mine are not ranked.
Okay, well, mine are definitively
Mine
ranked because that's how I am as a person. But don't feel like you guys have to.
Mine are like different from each other, so I feel like I can't properly rank them.
That's fair.
But the first one that I will offer you is actually the first one I'm going to offer you is one that Matt. I don't remember if you sent me this one or if you just recommended it and I bought it, but I'm pretty sure you sent it to me.
Oh yeah, Mr. Magic is so good.
I've been wanting to read that one.
Mr. Magic is such a cool book, such a cool premise. It's so unique. And one of the things that I think, like, so this year, as I was looking and reflecting on the books that I've read this year, I felt like I didn't have as many books this year that as compared to last year, where I felt like my heart and soul was like taken with them. Yeah. Which I think is more of a reflection of like where I was at this year. I felt very like distracted and all over the place this year. But one of the things that I noticed was that I really, really, really enjoyed books that had to do with friendship more than books that had to do with like love.
Yeah.
Like, and Mr. Magic is one of those books where like the love in the friendship is really interesting, and dynamics within this group of friends is really interesting, and like who you show up as and for your friend group is interesting. But all that being said, this book is like, I mean, a fucking wild ride. And like in the back, the first little like sentence that popped out to me just now is it's a skin crawling story of pop culture fandom and 90s nostalgia. And that's exactly what it is. It's skin crawly and it's like bizarre. And I feel like I didn't really understand what was happening for like 99% of it in the best way possible.
No,
awesome.
That's actually on my list of like, I think I'm going to reread it in 2025. That was my number one book of last year.
Yeah.
And I was like, I keep thinking about it because when I went into it, it was recommended to me on a horror podcast. And there are definitely like horror elements. But like you said, at the core, it's more of like a fantasy, and it's more about friendship, and it's more about like what is nostalgia. Like it was like, and there are still like horror elements there, but I think I want to read it again now, knowing what the full scope of the book is, and try to find like little, it feels like a book that requires a second reading to catch like Easter eggs and breadcrumbs throughout it.
I agree. Well,
then I have to add that to my list.
Oh, Eric, there is not
really
a book
good
in this world I'm more confident that you will like love. Not only will you love, but you'll love
and devour.
You'll be like, how do I make the YA version of this? How do I buy the rights to this and get back into filmmaking and make the movie version of this? Like,
that one should so be a movie.
It's insane that it's not already. Like, it's so well done. All right, Eric, how about you?
It is.
So I'm going to go with the only person that is on my list that has been on the show, and it is Full Shift. It's a graphic novel by Jennifer Dugan, and it is illustrated by Kit Seaton. And it is about a chaotic bisexual werewolf named Tessa. And I love werewolf stuff. I think this year I've realized that I still like vampires, but I prefer werewolves. I just think they're more fun. And this is just
are you definitively
really
Team Jacob now?
No, I wouldn't say that, but I'm also not Team Edward either. So
I love that. Team Nobody.
Team Nobody, because
everyone that's terrible.
I'm Team who's the himbo brother? I'm Team that one.
Emmett.
Helen Lutz or whatever his name is.
Yeah, Emmett.
Emmett. Yeah, I'm really Team funny. Emmett. Emmett and whoever his child bride was named in that book.
Hilarious.
But yeah, I love Full Shift because it's a graphic novel, and this is a arc, so I don't even know if the actual one is in color, but I just kind of love anything that has a chaotic bisexual, and when you add chaotic bisexual werewolves, that's like being hunted down by a bunch of werewolf hunters. I love it. And I love Jen.
Yeah.
She's a great
I was going to say,
writer.
I want to give a
And
shout out.
Awesome.
Jen is on my top 10 list for this year. Hot Dog Girl.
on mine
I read
too.
Hot Dog Girl and absolutely loved
Girl.
it. And it was some girls do also almost made my top 10 list. I became
I
a
love
big
Some Girls Do.
I became a big Jennifer Dugan fan this year. All right, so I'm going to say number 4 on my list, someone that we haven't had on the podcast yet. But I first discovered this person when I helped with Eric's 22 debut live stream event. And this is Timothy Jablonski with Never Been Kissed.
Cute.
This book, I won't lie, I'm a little unsure how it fell into a YA debut because it is about people post-college.
I think we weren't doing YA for that live stream. It was all just queer authors. Because I think we had a couple middle grade too.
Okay.
There was one that was it was a Disney book.
Was it Ravenous Things?
I feel bad. Yes.
I actually
With
just
the,
bought that. I haven't read it yet.
Subway?
Yeah, because that sounded awesome. So I bought that recently. But this is okay.
So I know Timothy has, I think, like a couple YAs. I think there's he has that's kind of a sequel-ish to that one, I think, called You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince.
Yes.
And that's his like Christmas one. I think that one is also like new adult as well. It's not YA.
Well, either way, would love to have Timothy on the show eventually. This book was so specifically written for Matt Kelly in mind. It's about a guy fresh out of college who wants to be a filmmaker, and he spends all of his time going at the local drive-in, watching old vintage movies and trying to preserve the history of film, but he's also never really been in a committed relationship, and it's juggling all these different feelings and emotions. And as I'm reading the book, I'm like, this feels really familiar. This feels like the story of the drive-in that I go to that's like 2 hours away up in the Pocono Mountains. So on my flight home from California, I actually messaged Timothy and inquired, hey, is this book inspired by the Mahoning Drive-In? And he said, yes. Yes, it is. So just like that book, I a lot of the books that I'm going to mention, I read during my week at San Diego Comic-Con because there was just downtime at the booth in the morning. There was flights to and from. There was a train ride. There was a lot of times to just sit and read. And Never Been Kissed, I read the entire book on my flight home over 8 hours and just loved every single second of it. So big shout out to Timothy. Can't wait to have you on the show next year.
Love it.
All right, Alyssa.
Oh, so my turn. Yes, it is. Okay, so my next pick is going to be and these are not in any particular order. I read a book called The Wishing Game, and I have not stopped thinking about it since I read it. And this is another one that I think you both should give this one a shot because it came with my like book of the month situation.
Okay.
It's another one that there is like with even the ones that are not centered around a love story, there is like some sort of like element of it where there is like a love story. But this is a story about a woman named Lucy. And I think I lent this book to someone because I loved it. And I know I had the physical copy, but I couldn't find it. So I must have lent it to someone and haven't gotten it back. It's about this woman named Lucy who is, she's like in her early 20s and she's a teacher. And she has this one student who is a foster kid in her class that she just like has such a deep connection with and so badly wants to adopt him because his foster home, his time at whatever foster home he's at is about to be up and he's going to be placed somewhere else. And so she wants to be able to adopt him before he's going to be removed from like her classroom and she won't be able to see him again. And so the problem is that she just doesn't make enough money to be able to provide the house that they would need. They would need to like check and make sure she has whatever. And when she was a child, her favorite book series was this, I can't remember what it's called. It's like something Island, Clock Island. Is this book series that was like super, super famous. Like think of like Harry Potter, like levels of everyone knew it. It was like so famous, so popular. And when she was a kid, she grew up with very neglectful parents and she like ran away to what is actually like where the author lives. And he like turned into like a Clock Island. Like he created like this fantasy island and made it real, and that's where he lives. And she literally like got on a bus, got on a boat, whatever, and ran away to Clock Island. And so now she's an adult, and she has started to read those books to this kid that she very much wants to adopt. And she gets this letter in the mail that's like, the author of the book is writing a new book, and he is creating a competition, and he invited like it kind of gives me like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory vibes. He invited a handful of people to Clock Island that he has had personal connections with. Like Lucy just showed up at this man's door, and many of these other kids had a similar story. And they are all going to basically compete for the manuscript of his very last Clock Island book. And that manuscript is going to be worth like millions and millions of dollars if they choose to sell it. And so the whole story is like actually, it kind of reminds me of like all of the workshop stuff I've been doing this week, where like all of the challenges that each person that they all are facing, at least one of them is like perfectly designed for the person, one of the like 5 or 6 people that are invited. So they have to like face their fear in at least one of these challenges. And so it's about this like group of adults who is refacing the things that were big challenges and big like insecurities as children, and doing that as adults, and then trying to like find their honesty and integrity with something like this gift that is this manuscript of a book that they could potentially get. And like the author is sort of having a similar thing to like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where it's like, which person is the most worthy of receiving this? And, you know, it's just a beautiful story. It's like, it has adventure, it has coziness. Like the island is like off of Rhode Island. So it's like rocky island vibes. It has like a magical vibe without like physical like actual magic. It just is like, it's such a cool story. It's beautiful. It's cozy, and it has like an amazing happy ending, like better than you could want it to be. And I just loved it. So The Wishing Game is very high in my top 5.
Definitely gonna read that.
Awesome. I love how it's like there's parts when you're describing it, I'm like, oh, well, this sounds sweet, and there's other parts where I'm like, oh, this sounds sinister, kind of thing. It's like,
that's how it feels. There are
could
parts
go
of it,
either way.
Yeah, there are parts of it where it's like, oh, this is so sweet. Like she's, you know, experiencing her childhood and going to this magical island, and like each of the bedrooms is decorated in theme of one of the books in the series, and it's like not a detail is missed in it, and it's like so encompassing and gives like Walt Disney levels of magic. And I have to face my childhood insecurity and somehow unpack that while I'm there, and learn some big life lessons. It's really cool book.
All right, Eric.
I'm going to do the rest of my people. I think I'm going to do people that I would love to have on the show. This one is called Till the Last Beat of My Heart. It's by Luangi Beaumontes. And it is like, it has Pushing Daisies vibes. It's this kid.
I know your love of Pushing Daisies. First podcast we ever did together was about Pushing Daisies.
Yes, and how great the pilot episode of that show is, because the world building is incredible. It's like everything's just told to you like within the first 15 minutes, and you're like, cool, I've got the rest of the show in my head. Done.
Yeah.
This is Till the Last Beat of My Heart is it's a paranormal romance. This kid, I forget his name now, Jackson, is his mom is a mortician and has a funeral home, and his former friend and crush ends up in the funeral home dead. His name is Christian, and he somehow, Jackson brings Christian back to life. Like he was, I think, in an accident, and like his rib cage has been crushed in and everything, so he's like completely dead, and he just wakes up in the middle of the night hearing a noise from the morgue, and goes downstairs, and like his rib cage is like, he's waking up, but he can't breathe because his ribs are crushing his lungs and everything. And It's very realistic, but then all of a sudden through this magic, he slowly starts to heal. And then they take him to the hospital and like, oh, it must have been some kind of mistake, because they're in the real world. They can't just be like, this kid can't just walk around being like, oh, I'm dead, and now I'm not. People would notice. And so they eventually find out that because Christian is alive, there is a secret in Jackson's family that involves kind of necromancy, and he starts to learn about it, and also that now Christian's life is tied to his, and that's all I'll say about it. But it's so sweet. It's got plenty of pop culture references for like people who love Buffy or anything like kind of horror stuff. There's plenty of horror movie references in it. But it isn't a horror. It's very much just this romance about a kid figuring out his life and kind of coming to terms with this secret in his family. But the characters are all great. Like his friend's family is so sweet, and his family is sweet. I just really liked it. It's like it kind of has this high stakes feel, but it still has a lot of cozy vibes to it, where you kind of just want to be carried along and be like, okay, I know everything's going to turn out well at the end.
I love that. Wait, what is it called again? I'm putting it on my TBR.
Till the last beat of my heart.
Okay.
Yeah, that also sounds really good. Man, just building up both of our to read lists on.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of this podcast, baby.
Right.
Truly. All right, so I'm stepping out of anything even remotely in the YA world, and we're going full romance on this one.
Ooh.
But spooky romance. And I'm going with Ashley Poston's Dead Romantics. Are either of you familiar with this book?
No.
Okay.
Oh wait, it's on my TBR already, but I do not remember.
I may
this.
have actually
You must have
mentioned
told
this
me about
to
it.
you guys.
Yeah.
So this was recommended to me by Scott from Horror Movie Night, and then later Scott's wife from Horror Movie Night.
Yeah.
There is a girl who's similar to, like, think of a 6 Feet Under or a Pushing Daisies, grows up in a family of morticians, and her father both had this skill where they could see the ghosts of dead people, and they could help them cross over. Now she's grown up. She's moved away from the family. She lives in New York, and she works as a ghost writer for a romance novelist, like a very prolific romance novelist. And she has a meeting with her new editor that goes really, really poorly. And then she gets a phone call letting her know that her dad has just passed away and she needs to come home for the funeral. And while she's at the funeral for her dad, her editor shows up as a ghost. And she has to help him find out what happened to him after she left the meeting that caused him to die. But also she slowly starts to fall in love with him and realizing, man, this sucks. I'm finally falling in love with someone that's dead. This feels like a plot to a cheesy romance novel that I would ghostwrite. And it kind of like walks this fun meta line with all types of twists and turns. There is a third act reveal that, like, on the airplane when I was reading it, I went, oh shit. So like absolutely need to read. It's funny. It's cute. It's cozy, I think, would definitely be a word I'd throw out there. And like, it's, you know, a good like 250, 300 pages, like an easy breezy read. So highly recommend this one. Dead Romantics from Ashley Poston.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. My next one is a YA OK alum.
Ooh.
And it's The Last Girl Standing by Jennifer Dugan.
Yeah.
I loved this book.
Yes.
Until the very end. The way it ended made me so angry.
Yeah.
And like, it still is so worth the read, and it's such a great story. It reminds me of like what I wanted Final Girl Support Group to be. Everyone kept telling me I would love that book. I've tried to read it like 4 times and I cannot get through it.
Yeah.
I finished it. This is the Last Girl Standing is better.
It's so much better. It's so much better. It's a little gay. It has the elements of like Final Girls that you want, but like more of like the am I losing my mind or is this real feeling that's happening. And it was so great. And forewarning, if you are anything like me, you're going to get to the end and be like, no. But
it's all
still
about
so
toxic
good.
relationships.
Yes, it's about toxic relationships, being super codependent on people, and like what that does to you and to your relationship. And God, the twist is good. The twist is good. It's all good. It's such a great book. So Jennifer Dugan.
And
That's on my
if
list.
it's now out in paperback, and they made a different cover, and the cover glows in the dark now. So go out and buy that paperback.
I read it on my Kindle, and I like to have books, like physical representations of books, even when I read them on Kindle, when I really love them. So I'm going to get the glow in the dark one because that's really cool.
It's very
That's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah, that's one that I
Eric,
still
what's
haven't
next?
read, but I really, really, really want to.
You gotta. It's so good.
I'm going with a thriller as well. It's called The Color of a Lie. It's by Kim Johnson. It is about, I believe it's in the 60s. It's about this black teen who passes for white. And basically, he used to work with his dad. His dad would like write for the Green Book, which is the thing where people in the South would go down and kind of write a book that was places that were safe for black people to go. And Calvin would always go to the places that like they weren't sure about just to test and see if he could eat there. And so they live in Chicago. Something happens in Chicago that sends them to Pennsylvania, and it is Bucks County, Pennsylvania too. And I'm trying to show you. There's like a little map here. It basically takes place in and around the Bensalem area too. And
cool.
This is. I actually spoke with Kim at the Columbus Book Festival, and it is actually about, it's based on this real neighborhood in Bucks County, and how she was doing research on what it was like back then and everything, because it is a historical thriller. And it's just about kind of the lies that he is living in his life with his family and in the 60s, and how dangerous it is. And it's just very, very exciting and heartbreaking because it's based on reality, but it's still a thriller, and it's just really just a great book. I suggest everybody go out and read it, and I genuinely cannot wait to have Kim on here to talk about it.
It's so interesting because the way you're describing it, it's so hard to understand where the thriller element comes in, which is making me more intrigued.
Yeah.
Well, it's because he's a black kid who's pretending to be white. And so he's living his life as a lie. And he's in this new neighborhood, going to a white school, living life as a white kid, and hiding the entire reality where the rest of his family, they can't pass. So because he's passing, he has to continue living this lie.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I love it.
Another one to add it to the list.
In the darkest corners of the internet, a nameless, formless entity has been growing. No one dares question where it was created or what it wants, but those who have been entranced by its musings chant its blood-curdling name in unison. Horror Movie Night!
Find Horror Movie Night on your favorite podcasting app or at hmnpodcast.com.
Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
Well, for those of you who are astute enough to pay attention, this is the first of the two books I put above Only Light Left Burning.
Here we go.
So number 2 is a autobiography that I was a couple years late on. Everyone else had already gotten to this one. But I finally read it and just jaw was on the floor the whole time. Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died.
Oh. All right, I'll allow it.
It's so good.
Yeah. It's
what a phenomenal book.
And like not just like I think that there's a world where this book is like, ooh, tea, or like whatever.
Yeah.
But I think what makes it work is Jeanette is also just so funny with the way that she writes things. And there is like in all of these horrible things that happen to her, there's this like constant sense of humor that she keeps going, or like just like I don't know if she's written anything else yet, but I'm so ready for her to write more narrative fiction. Like, now that she's gotten her life story out there, I want to read what like Jeanette McCurdy's fiction books are, because her writing style is what I think elevated this higher in, you know, there were, over the last 5 years, there have been a ton of biographies and autobiographies that people have loved. But I think that, like, I mean, even this year, I would say that I am glad my mom died will have more staying power than, say, like the Britney Spears autobiography that came out this year was like kind of this big sensation for the week or two that it was initially out. But like then it's like not really talked about that much. I think it's because it's a much more and then this happened and then this happened and then this happened autobiography where it's like, no, with this one, Jeanette is an author. You can feel that she is an author and a storyteller to her core, and she is crafting a story that jumps around throughout timelines and like looks at things through the lens, the way that she presents stuff as if it's written by her at the age in which that moment is happening and stuff like there's just a ton of really interesting writing choices that come out in this that make it so much more riskier and interesting than like your usual autobiography. Yeah, loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Nice.
I love that. I wish I could have put that in. Like, that still is like one of my favorite books that I've read last year.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah.
I agree. And it was nice that she had like a storytelling element to it that can sometimes be challenging in an autobiography, and she really like nailed it. And I agree. I hope she also does like another. I want her to write fiction.
Yeah.
I really would love to see her do that.
Very much so.
Okay. So my next pick is going to be I think Incidents Around the House is going to be one of them. And this was the audiobook that I was listening to when I was driving to your house, Matt.
That scared the shit out of you.
That scared the shit out of me. I was driving at night, like so nervous because it was so good. And I haven't had a book like really freak me out like that in a while. So that was a cool experience. And so basically the premise of the book is this little girl starts seeing this like, I don't even know, monster thing that she's calling Other Mommy. And this, like the way that this thing is described just sounds fucking disgusting. And it's like living in her closet, and it comes out of her closet and speaks to her. And at some point it always asks her if she can live in her heart. And basically this like monster thing is, did you not get yeah, it's gross.
Don't like that.
And yeah, no, hate it. And she basically is asking to take possession of this little girl. And the girl just keeps like saying no because she's scared, but is also like, obviously he's calling her Other Mommy. So she feels some sort of like connection with this monster thing. And so the story is about how their family navigates this. And a lot of it, because a lot of times when you like watch or read possession stories and there's like a little kid involved, you're like, why has not one person thought like, maybe we should get this kid psychologically evaluated, like what's going on? And I feel like it's not perfect in that way, like in terms of how realistic it is, but there are moments in this more than any other possession story where I feel like, yeah, that's probably what a family would actually do, is like have this kid get evaluated by a freaking professional, or like do like a little family check-in to be like, have we lost our fucking minds? Is the CO2 alarm still working? Like that kind of stuff, or carbon monoxide. So yeah, like I feel like there's a realism there that you don't really see with possession stories as much. But it is still like fantasy vibes, and the monster is so scary and very like interesting, very cool. And like they at some point try to get away from this other mommy, and they go to the beach to try and get space from the house. And like they're running from the house thinking it's going to help them run away from the thing. And of course we know possession stories, that's not how that works. And so it's just dealing with this very scary, very like supernatural thing with not only your family, but then also like your neighbors that are being affected by this, and like your grandma that's being affected by this, and like trying to run and run and run and like running low on sleep. Like you feel the like heart pounding part of like, how are we going to figure this out? How are we going to get to the end of this? It was just so great. And I listened to that whole audiobook on the way to your house and on the way back. And then I finished it. In 24 hours, basically. Is what I'm trying
Love to hear
it. It was awesome. Yeah. It was really good.
You like
incidents around the house.
You brought up how much that book scared you so many times while you were here.
Yeah, because it was really scary. It was really scary, and I don't know if it's because it was an audiobook too that like added a different layer to it. Because I was just listening to like different actors tell the story, but I just feel like the elements of it that felt real to me grounded it in reality in a way that I have a hard time doing. Like, that's part of the reason why sometimes when people are like so scared by horror movies, I'm like, yeah, but like in reality, are you driving through Texas and did you go into a stranger's home?
Yeah.
No. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre only applies to Eric.
Yeah.
That's how real of a fear could you possibly have? You know, and that's why possession stories oftentimes are the ones that I think that those are the ones that scare people the most, because a lot of the times, like, I'll never forget watching The Exorcism of Emily Rose and being like, oh shit, because Emily Rose in that story is religious. So I was like, this fuck is going after the religious people too? And I was like, so you can't, how does anyone protect themselves? How does anyone hide? And then that like ruined my life for like 2 years. And so with stories like this, it feeling very grounded in real life, more so than other possession stories, made it scarier, I think, to me. While it also being hand in hand with it being like a little like sci-fi supernatural sometimes.
All right.
So incidents around the house, put it on your TBRs. It's real good.
Love that. All right, Eric.
So unfortunately, I didn't realize that when I picked this book that I actually couldn't talk about it, because it's The Brightness Between Us by Elliot Schrieffer. And it genuinely is one of my favorite books that I have read this year. But I realized it's a sequel, and the first book is amazing. And there's a twist. There's a couple of twists in the first book that it kind of gets a little spoiled for you if you even look up what The Brightness Between Us is.
Okay.
So what I would say, because I already want to have Elliot on the podcast, and I was fully preparing to read or to talk about The Darkness Between Us, or The Darkness Outside Us, which is the first one, and then just tell everybody to go buy The Brightness Between Us, because it is a perfect duology. It's I'll tell you what the first one's about. It's about two kids who wake up in this spaceship that they learn that they're being sent to rescue one of their sisters from this terraforming experiment on one of, I think, on a moon. I think it's Titan. I forget, maybe it's Saturn's moon. It's one of those, but it's Titan. Anyway, so they wake up with this artificial intelligence that's basically been keeping them in like hypersleep or whatever. And they are now preparing to go and rescue this sister. And these two kids are from like kind of warring factions back on Earth, because this is in the future. And they're basically are now just two countries on the in the entire Earth, and they have been at war for years, and so now both of them are on this ship as like a way to bring the two nations together and stuff. And it's just twist after twist after twist, and then this one picks up shortly, like maybe 16 years after, or something like that. And then it also has a couple of flashbacks as well to before the first book started. Mm-hmm. And it's great. And I had a moment as well, Matt, where I was in public reading and I went, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
it was because it was for a different reason, but like it was basically when I realized what the title meant, and I even brought that up when I met with Elliot because I helped him launch this in New York, and that was like the first thing I said. I was like, first of all, everybody that is about to read this book, as soon as they realize what the title means, they're all going to send you hate mail. So where can they direct that? It's so good. It's the kind of thing where you are emotionally devastated, but there's still so much hope at the end of it that you're like, fuck yes, this is great.
Yeah. What is the title of the first one?
The Darkness Outside Us.
Okay. The Darkness.
And then this one was The Brightness Between Us. You have to read both of them.
Okay. I love duologies. One of my last book of the 5 is a duology also. I like them because it's nice to have a continuation. Have one story that feels mostly complete, like a full story, and then know that you have one more. Like, one note that I think is interesting about this year is I read almost all of the ACOTAR books this year, and not one of them is on my list.
Yeah.
I mean,
like, and I enjoyed the first 3. After that, I felt like the books were just like not what I signed up for anymore, and I was like, this. Sometimes brevity is also a skill, you know. And it's like, did we need like 3,000 more pages of this? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, just because things are popular too, like you can like something, but that doesn't speak to you like some other books might too.
Right.
So.
I also think I'm pretty sure I know what your last book is then.
Really?
Yeah, I think I do. I'm making a guess here. I can't remember which one is the one that you would have read more recently, but is it perhaps by an author named Dana Schwartz?
Wait. No, I don't. Oh, no, because I haven't read that one yet. I haven't read the second one yet.
Okay.
I haven't read it yet.
That was my random guess. All right, so my number 1, this should come as a shock to no one, including the two of you here, because I talked about finally finishing this childhood book series after all these years. Animorphs book number 54, The Beginning, by K.A. Applegate.
So funny.
Wow.
That's an insane pick.
Listen, I closed the chapter on a book series that I started when I was 11. So
you literally
closed the chapter,
wow.
and it's a phenomenal. It's a phenomenal final. Eric, you had no chance against Animorphs and Jeanette McCurdy. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Animorphs, I would say, is better than anything I've written. So. And like, not some of them, because I will say some of them are ghost written. Because those books were coming out every month, and I think K.A. Applegate. First of all, I think it's 2 people. It's her and her husband that wrote it. I could be wrong. That might be something else. But I know Catherine Applegate she wrote a lot of them, but then they wanted one every single month, and you can tell when there are ones. She wrote all the ones that have like the main story arc, and then there's like 1 or 2 where all of a sudden somebody gets like an allergic reaction and keeps turning into a crocodile randomly.
Yeah.
And those are the ones I don't think she maybe wrote.
Yeah.
I think it's on the Wikipedia page. It says which ones were written by other people, but
my buddy Eric did a video fairly recently about Goosebumps spin-off books. Like specifically like Bone Chillers and like all of like the books that, and I forget which one it was, but there was one that she was actually responsible for, and I don't think it was like Goof Lumps, but it was like in that same category of like like a filthy parody book for elementary school kids of a Goosebumps style scary story that she was like the ghostwriter for, or like wrote under like a fake name, like wrote under a parody name. But yeah, no, the Animorphs books are great. I'll use this as a quick opportunity to say, hey, if you're listening to YOK and you love it, go on YouTube and subscribe to Geekscape TV, where there's constantly great content. How does this tie to Animorphs? Very tangentially, we are doing a video in the new year of the 10 greatest shows in SNCC history, and Animorphs is an honorable mention.
I love it.
But
I don't follow the Geekscape YouTube.
By the way,
what the hell?
The book series I think you're talking about is Barfarama.
Barfarama, yeah, she was a helping hand in the Barfarama books.
Yeah, she wrote the
Barfarama
is series.
Crazy.
Stories were humorous and told with strong emphasis on scatological humor and other generally repulsive themes.
So maybe she did write the apple, the Animorphs where someone keeps sneezing and turning into a crocodile.
Maybe, actually.
You guys have almost 5K subscribers. That's crazy.
Yeah, we're very close.
Awesome.
My goal is to have 5K by the time we ring in the new year. So we'll see.
That's awesome.
All right.
Good for you guys.
How about you, Alyssa?
Okay, so my last one is the first of a duology called Divine Rivals, and I haven't even read the second one yet, but the first one is a really cool. It's a cool story. It's a beautiful story, and I read it on the plane, on all of the planes that I've been on recently, and the story is about this girl whose older brother goes to war, and she's very, very close with him. Her dad is like not really in the picture at all. He is not in the picture at all. So it's just her and her mom, and her mom ends up like becoming an alcoholic, and it like is like a whole thing. She is also a journalist. And she loves writing, and she has this typewriter at home that her grandmother gave her. And she's been writing these letters to her brother, but she doesn't know where he is yet. So she, instead of being able to like actually send them, she inquired about where he is, but has not heard back yet. So instead of being able to actually send them, she put one underneath her dresser and it like disappeared. And she was like, what the fuck? And so then she was like, that's weird. Oh, Bonnie. Okay. And Bonnie's like, yeah, fucking right. That's weird. But yeah, so then she's just sort of like trusting the universe that it somehow is getting to her brother. She's like, maybe it's not, but what if it is? And so she just starts writing these letters to him and puts them under the dresser and they keep disappearing. And so she thinks that they're all going to her brother Forrest, or she's hoping that they are. And then one day another letter comes flying out from under the dresser, and it says, this isn't Forrest, which is her brother's name. And she's like, oh my God, someone has been getting these fucking letters, and who the fuck is it? And so now the story is about who these letters have been going to. And she also ends up deciding to change her career and be like a little more risky in it, and like really be kind of like, I don't think this spoils anything for the story, but she ends up being a journalist who writes from the actual like war ground. Like she goes to the war grounds and like actually writes from there too. So it's not like super about war. I don't really love books that are like that. That was one of my issues with ACOTAR, was after a while I was like, you sold me on fairy smut, and now I'm learning about like international, like foreign affairs essentially. And I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? So it's definitely not that. It has more heart and more soul than that. And it has like just enough like magic and mythology in it to make it like just a magical story. It's very, very cool. I just downloaded the second one. I can't wait to read it.
All right, Eric.
I definitely want to read that one.
Last really one. Good.
So I didn't rank any of my other books, but this one is definitely the favorite book that I have read this year. I think I have recommended it the most to anything. It's Icarus by Kay Ankrum.
Okay.
And it's a kind of retelling of the story of Icarus, but it's about this kid whose dad is an art forger, and he has basically made his son this like cat burglar who they have been breaking into this rich guy's house for the better part of a decade to steal his art and replace it with his father's forgeries. And then one day this kid breaks in to steal something, and there is another kid there that no one's supposed to be in the house. It's just this kid. And he finds out that the kid is on house arrest, and he's trapped there. And so he's like, well, I won't tell anybody if you keep coming to visit me. And then the two kind of create this little romance blossoms between them. But It's such a beautiful book. I don't know why I didn't recommend it to either of you yet, because I think both of you would love it. Matt, first of all, Kay Ingram writes in like flash fiction chapters. So each chapter is maybe one page at the most.
Love it.
So I read it. I am a slow reader. I read it in, I think, less than 2 days.
Ooh.
And I don't know how. I think there is some kind of magic. It's just like, the chapters are so short, the writing is so concise, but there is so much depth in it. And I think one of my favorite parts is just the way this kid's like, he's not allowed to have friends because his dad basically is like, your job is to break into this house. We're going to steal art and replace it with forgeries. And that's it. No one's ever allowed to come over this house. You're not allowed to have friends. And you also can't stand out. You're smart. You have to dumb yourself down to look average. You can't be athletic you can't play sports. You can't hurt yourself because we need you to climb walls and stuff. So basically this kid has been putting up these walls his whole life, and he knows people are going to look at him if he isn't making friends. So he makes friends just enough with everybody that he is well liked, but he doesn't ever feel like he has any best friends. And it's just the way these other like smaller characters kind of, there's like this intimacy between the two of them that he does not realize is there until the reader doesn't realize it's there because you're reading from this point of view. But just eventually you start to see that he thinks that these people are just pawns that he is using and doesn't realize that they actually care about him. And he learns that, oh my God, I have friends. And it's like heartbreaking and really, really sweet. And I kind of want to spoil part of it for you because there's this really, it's so cute. And there's this part where his dad goes away on a business trip and he goes out with his friends and they're like, oh, we're having a party. Why don't you come? And he's like, okay, sure. And he goes and gets drunk and brings them back to the house. So they're all hanging out and he's like having a good time for the first time in his life. And he wakes up the next morning and freaks out because he's not allowed to have people over. And he's worried that they're going to find the art forgeries and stuff. And then when his friends wake up, they were like, dude, your dad's just weird. That's fine. Cause he like hides the art forgery shit. And they're like, oh, your dad's just weird. We thought he was abusing you. We were ready to get you out of here.
Wow.
And I was started crying. I was like, these guys are so sweet. Cause they thought he was so weird because he was being abused, which I mean, he is emotionally, but they thought he was being physically abused and they were ready to take him away. And they had like saved up money. They had planned things together and he didn't know they ever talked about him. It's just really, really sweet. And it's like early enough that I don't think it's a big spoiler and it's not even the main part of the book, but it's like, it's just those really intimate connections that are in there and you like don't realize it until you're getting through these parts of the book. It's just beautiful. I love it so much. I can't say more good things about it.
Yeah.
Love
Everybody
it.
go read it. And I need to reach out to Kay Ingram and try and get them on this podcast because...
Well, listeners, there's 15 books for you to try to read in the new year. 16 if you count Only Light Left Burning that none of us put on our list. So
it's shit.
I brought it up here because I also will just say, like, I know it's hard to hear people talk about like you in front of your face like this, Eric, but like of the books
I'll just turn off my camera. Hold on 1 second.
Perfect. Go away. Of all of the books wow, he really did turn off his camera. That's so funny. Okay. So of all of the books that I read this year, this was one that really did like make I felt it in my heart. Like I really did. And it's funny. And if you listen to this podcast and you think that Eric is funny and like all of the Eric things now, like wait until you hear how he pours it into a story. And obviously this is the second in the series, but like it just is Eric in a story, in a book. And like we love Eric, so we love this story. And it really does have heart in a way where I really felt like I was missing that a lot this year. And it has heart in the love elements of the story and in the friendship elements of the story. And there's adventure it has everything.
And
it
there's
genuinely
tears.
does.
And he rips your heart
And
out and
there's tears.
stomps on it a couple times.
I was really fucking mad many times in this story. But it really is such a beautiful story, and like it's such a gift that we've been able to like share this whole YA OK experience with someone who is capable of creating art like this. And yeah, it like I remember just feeling very like emotional when I was reading this and being like, wow, like, and this person is my friend, and like I get to have conversations with him all the time, and he's capable of creating something that's so like wonderful, and it just was very cool. So if you have not read either any of his books, like it really is, you're missing out. You really are. Like, what are you doing listening to this and not reading Eric's books? That's crazy.
For real.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to make a very weird analogy, but like HBO Max recently put out a documentary about the history of yacht rock. And like the term yacht rock stemmed from like a web series in 2005 where like some comedians who had bought a bunch of random dollar store records were like, man, all of the musicians on all of these albums, like it's the same musicians, like the guys in Toto are also the backup band for Kenny Loggins, and they played all the music on Michael Jackson's Thriller, and they're like, wouldn't it be so funny if all these dudes were like friends hanging out in the 80s making music? And then like the Yacht Rock documentary is like, but turns out that's like legitimately the case. Like it was just a bunch of dudes who all lived fairly close to each other that loved making music, so they would like help each other out. And my analogy is like, in doing YA OK, I've found that there is this like beautiful friendship that Alyssa and I as non-writers get, like this kind of cool behind the curtain look at of like, man, all these YA authors like really do love each other, and it doesn't matter if they're one of the bigger names in YA or like an up and comer. It very much seems like once you're in the camp, you are like in that camp for life, even if you walk off and do like another genre of book. And it's just very heartwarming. How many times even before we hit record have we just like offhand mentioned a recent episode with a guest and the person's just like, oh my God, I love that person. Like it really does feel like it's just this beautiful community of supportive writers. And I just love that.
I do. I love it too.
So, hey, we got through our first year.
We did. And you guys are so fucking talented. Like and it's like, it does. I feel like I can't properly express like how much I like, it's just like crazy. Like this feels like such an insane feat for me personally. Like this would be such a stretch for me to ever even attempt to do, that the fact that like Eric has done this a bunch of times and will do it over and over again. Like that is just such talent and devotion to your craft. And it's just so cool.
Yeah. And
it is wild that like everybody, like we've only had a couple handfuls of people on the podcast, and there's like thousands and thousands and thousands of other books coming out week after week. Yeah. And it's like all of those people are
phenomenal.
Writing their own shit. And it's like, it's wild.
It is. It's very cool. Everyone people who listen to this podcast already know like how powerful and magical reading is. And like, if there's ever a hobby or a habit that I constantly am trying to get people to like engage in, it's reading, because it is so powerful. And it just like, it's like the thing that humans do is tell stories. So like, I engage with the telling of the story.
I also feel like it's one of the only activities I do where I'm not stressed out about stuff. Like, like anytime that I'm like watching a movie, I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, I'm always thinking of what else I should be doing with that time. But like when I like sit down and read a book, it's like just me time. And it's like, it's like one of those moments where it's like, all right, like Barb's out with the kids, and I'm just like wrapped in a blanket on the recliner, just like reading a couple chapters of a book. Like it's the most cozy activity I can do at any point in the day. Eric, the best thing about you being the co-host of YAOK is that even if you decide not to put out a YA book, we'll still promote it, but you're the only one. The only one that happens.
Which is exciting because I am going on submission for my first adult rom-com in the new year. So when we're done recording, I will read it to you. Read the pitch for it.
I cannot wait.
Not yet.
Well, before we wrap up, just a heads up, everybody, in 2 weeks, as we release every other week, it's going to be New Year's Eve. And we're not going to put out an episode that week. But what we will do is put out like a little bonus episode. Alyssa and Erik have both been on a ton of other Geekscape podcasts. So we'll either put out one of those or like a super cut episode of all of those appearances. We'll figure it out. I'll figure out but there'll be something on the feed. And then when we get to January 14th, we will officially kick off year 2 of the YAOK podcast. We don't need to do the recommendations because we just recommended 16 books to you. So instead, we're just going to say go to YAOK Podcast on Instagram and you tell us your book recommendations. What have you been reading? What do you think that we should take a look at? And we'll be back in the new year and maybe we'll have taken some of those recommendations from y'all.
Yeah. And wait, one other thing that I would like to encourage everyone to do is make it a challenge to yourself that you will get one person who says that they don't read, which I hate that shit.
Yeah.
Get at least one person in your life who says they don't read to read an entire book in the next 6 months.
Honestly, I recommend just tell them to listen to YAOK because the amount of books that I felt obligated to purchase just after doing the interview and being like, this person's great. I'm going to buy everything that they've ever written. It really,
You're so right.
I think that that's a great way to get people invested in picking up a book and doing it for them themselves is hey, this person's pretty cool. Let me read their book. So make that your New Year's resolution. Read more books. And we'll be back in 2025.
We love you. Thank you for listening. Happy 2025. Woo!
Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
In the darkest corners of the internet, a nameless, formless entity has been growing. No one dares question where it was created or what it wants, but those who have been entranced by its musings chant its blood-curdling name in unison. Horror Movie Night!
Find Horror Movie Night on your favorite podcasting app or at hmnpodcast.com.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.